For this episode of Coffee with Closers, I'm sitting down with Genevieve Thiers. Genevieve is a disruptor, entrepreneur, speaker, investor, and an activist for women. Her first company, SitterCity.com, is America's first company to take caregiving services online. SitterCity was recently acquired by Bright Horizon. Stay tuned for my conversation with Genevieve, where she shares some of her experience building her first company as well as investing into other women-founded tech-enabled businesses.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Coffee with Closers, where business leaders share insights on how to build businesses from the ground up and best practices for innovating in their industry.
Hey Genevieve, I'm super excited to have you join me for this episode of Coffee with Closers.
Thanks for having me.
Most certainly, and I appreciate you sparing this afternoon. And obviously you're one of the tech giants of Chicago, one of the women founders of a tech company in Chicago. Have an interesting story of how you became an entrepreneur, and everybody has some sort of a story of how they overcame obstacle to build a company, build a business. Can you share our audience a little bit about your journey of becoming an entrepreneur?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, I'm the oldest of 7 kids, which has prepared me well for quarantine because life is nuts right now. I'm taking care of my own twins and just, trying to get everybody through school every day. But I was a babysitter. So I babysat pretty much my whole, high school and college years. And as I was graduating, I actually it was funny, I majored in music. I sang opera, but it was just a little too early for me to go to music school and perform. So I ended up instead launching a company. I remember it was a few days before graduation. I saw this 9 months pregnant mother carrying flyers up a set of like 200 steps. It was a huge hill and she shouldn't have been walking, and she's carrying these flyers up these steps, and I remember thinking, God, wouldn't it be great if there was like a Match.com or Monster.com where you could just go and all the babysitters and nannies were there, and that was sort of the vision from the start. And I couldn't get venture funding right away. 2001 was the dot-com crash, so I ended up building it very virally with flyers and footwork and interview after interview with local press. And I'm just glad it worked. It's been such a ride.
Mm-hmm. And I know I have to say this is before care.com and all those other competitors came into the picture, right? You were kind of the first in the game.
Yeah, we were the first in 2001. There was actually, there were a few competitors that came along. Urban Sitter came along in, I believe, 2005. Care.com 2006, and then some newer ones that I find very interesting now, like driving kids or kits for kids that are that are on a babysitting job. But yeah, I would say we put the industry together, which was very neat. I would say, we all have our different timings, right, of how we enter markets. I'm definitely earlier than later. I'm usually the person that comes in and just goes, gee, we need a mashup of a nanny agency and a Monster.com and a Match.com, and just actually builds the initial prototype and then pivots the behavior. Others come along after that's built and copy, and that's fine. But, I would say of entrepreneurs, what I usually see is like 90% of us tend to copy and iterate, so it's already out there. But 10% of us tend to be disruptors, where we sort of build and teach. And that's definitely what I am.
Most certainly. And I think, the interesting thing about, especially what you built is a two-sided marketplace. And it's very hard to build that two-sided marketplace because you have to create the demand from the customers, the actual customers. And at the same time, you have to also create the supply, right? Kind of like what Uber did with the rental cars and also with some of the other companies that are in the marketplace business. But I think you were kind of early in that stage. I'm sure you've had to deal with a lot of the struggles because it was a completely new business model that you were building.
It was so hard. The balance was the thing. You had to get the balance right, where there were enough sitters that the parent believed that it was real, but there were enough parents posting jobs so the sitters didn't flee. And, it was hard. It was really hard. We had to be hyper communicative when we did launch a market. Launching the market was hard because, again, like I said, I kind of got laughed out of rooms for the first few years. I heard a lot of, it's a babysitters club and my wife handles that. And, I just remember thinking, get your wife in here. You're not going to want to miss this. But, it was difficult. I wasn't talking to people generally that dealt with their kids on a regular basis. And so, I ended up flyering, the 34 colleges in Boston on foot with a backpack full of flyers. It worked, and I found that for every, say, 100 parents, I would need about 1,000 sitters. So, I gradually began to understand what the ratios were that would open a market, and then it would hit a tipping point, and then it would start rolling. What was interesting was that I ended up actually opening more markets with my backpack. I'd say I opened 6 or 7, flying out with the backpack, with the flyers. I looked like a college student, so I could walk into a college university setting and flyer the dorms. Often I wouldn't get caught. And that was really, really helpful. And then I would go to colleges or anywhere, really, like baby fairs that I could find mothers, and I would just talk till I was hoarse about what I was doing. So it's hard. It's hard to be the first. It's hard to create an industry. Now that I invest in women, and I've done, over 15 angel investments in other women in tech-run companies, being the first, it requires a back-breaking amount of work. And you will get the recognition, but unfortunately, you'll probably have, a lot of other, well, in my case, it wasn't too bad, but, an industry will form. So you'll have venture capitalists on the coasts eager to step on your back once you've done all the work, which is hard, but I've done great. I'm proud and excited, and it's quite a story. I like being somebody who invents stuff, who disrupts, even though I would say it's a lot harder than copying and iterating.
Most certainly, because I think you have a lot to be proud of, because obviously you came into an industry, you created a category, and you had to make it work. And oftentimes when you are the first in the industry, you're a trendsetter, you have a chance of not winning at all. Like Friendster, for example, right? They were kind of premature to a marketplace and they didn't succeed. Then came Facebook and some of the other social media platforms, and they took off. And in your case, you actually created a category and you succeeded. And most recently, the company was acquired as well, right? So that's an interesting success story to share.
Well, we're very happy. Because we invented our category, as you said, the category of online care, which later, of course, became the huge industry it was. The thing that was crazy about it was that this was a screamingly loud need. The scale of like vitamins, aspirin, morphine, this was ridiculously needed. And I think what worked in my favor is that everyone underestimates women and moms and what we need. Because there's not enough of us out there building for us. And that's because of a horrifically broken pipeline that began in 1984. And I'm happy to talk till the cows come home about what happened. But women are shunted out of tech. And so this broken pipeline leads to us bypassing the world where you go in and you learn, then build. And so I lucked into everything with the training of an opera singer. I lucked in to learning, and I'm pretty quick study, thank goodness. So, I was able to do it. But when you invent your category, there are so many weird things that can happen. Like, first of all, yes, you have to build it piece by piece. Literally flyering on foot. I did thousands of interviews, 5 interviews on the Today Show and, The View, and we were on Ellen, and just nonstop, trying to tell people what we were doing. And that was just a desperate need to really launch and build the industry. The other thing is, when you build something new, there might not be any natural buyers, or you might really have to educate the industry and the potential buyers on why they would want to purchase you. Because again, when they created something like a Bright Horizons, which did acquire us this year, they definitely weren't thinking that this sort of thing was going to come along. And so, we really had to partner with them for many, many years. until something happened.
So obviously, Genevieve, you accomplished a lot in your career. You were supposed to be a musician, turned into a tech entrepreneur, founded a company, created a category, and successfully exited that company, and now investing into so many other women entrepreneurs. So of all the things you accomplished, what's the one thing you're super proud of?
Well, I would say I'm proud that I got my company over 10 million in revenue. That was a huge deal to me. You don't know what you are when you first start building, and you can be a starter CEO, you can be a long-term CEO like a Steve Jobs, you can be honestly a Jack Dorsey who leaves, comes back, like there's a gap in the middle. I realized I'm definitely on the creative side. I launch things, and I've launched many things now, which is very exciting. It's lovely to have done Sitter City, but I would say that was the beginning of a lot for me. Um, I guess what I would say is just, in terms of where we left the company with Bright Horizons, I was most proud that no jobs were lost. That was delightful to me because this is not a time you want people free in the marketplace. I was happy that we got to the point where Fortune 500, Fortune 5000s, right, were recognizing that this was a really valuable asset to scoop up. I'm proud of so many things. I mean, we launched the corporate program that today is a hallmark, a staple of Bright Horizons and many others. Thousands of companies have used it at this point, as well as the U.S. Department of Defense, the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. We made people realize that childcare wasn't a woman's problem that should have been figured out in back rooms. It was serious, big business. And, it stops women and men from living their best lives every minute. And I'm proud to say I think that we've really made a dent in that unhappiness. I think we've saved marriages. I think we've saved people from having to move in with their parents during the recession. I think we've done a lot. And it's hard to quantify in the end every connection that was made or what it all means. But it was definitely seismic what we did. And that makes me proud.
Super, super proud. Yeah, super proud. Reason to be proud of. Obviously.
Well, it's nice too to been able to clear the way for another powerful woman. I'm sorry to jump in, but I just realized as well, like you'll note Elizabeth Hartz, our CEO, kind of jumped over with the Bright Horizons acquisition. That's nice too. To have another mom come in and be so exciting. I mean, she's brilliant at what she does, and to be able to kind of like launch another career and see women coming out of Sitter City and launching their own companies. That's a big deal to me too. Just wanted to add that.
Yeah, most certainly. So obviously you had to have learned a lot of lessons in the process of building your first company. I know you're now an investor and a coach and a consultant to a lot of entrepreneurs. But what is the one biggest lesson you learned in that process of building that company?
Well, I've learned so much of its luck, but I have learned a lot about timing and a lot about pain points. So the most valuable thing I think I've learned through what I built, and I learned this by accident in what I built because I stumbled into morphine, but I've learned this again, investing in over 15 women in tech, is that you don't want to build vitamins. You don't want to build aspirin. You want to build morphine. So when you look around the world, there's millions of different pain points that everybody can build towards every day. And I mean, those pain points really vary in severity. I find that people at this point, there was a while where they would pay for things like vitamins, like a recipe website, or something like that. They would pay for things like that. But I find that once people really began to understand the web and what it was there for, they settled into, okay, I'll buy morphine, but you build me morphine, right? And so we had morphine at Sitter City. We had nannies and sitters. When you lose your childcare, your life falls to pieces. You can't get to work. You can't make money. I mean, it's horrible, right? It's absolute panic. And so we had morphine. Our users would crawl over glass to get it. That's exciting. When I talk to women entrepreneurs, and I talk to hundreds, thousands, all the time, I find a lot of them might end up on aspirin or vitamins and not know it. In their head, it's critically important, but to the world, might not be. So in that case, I will always help if I can. I'll say, well, I wouldn't buy that, but this is morphine to me. I'd buy this, right? And you can twist and turn it a little bit. And then suddenly you've got something that, wow, I'd pay for that. And you just have to kind of sit in the problem for a while, and eventually the solution will become clear.
And I know most people, everyone say, yeah, people get into a business for money, but I know in your case, you kind of found an opportunity, there was a need, that's how you got into it. But now after you exited, you're still not stopping. You have, like you said, you're investing into 15 other entrepreneurs, and you have always finding time to guide others to go and build new things. So what is that why? What keeps you motivated? What's that driving factor behind?
Actually, what's funny is, yeah, I really had to look at that, because now I've made my fortune and I get to do things and buy things I could never really have dreamed of. My parents were teachers. I'm one of 7 kids. We did not have money. And so that was hard. I have realized that I built Sitter City for my mother. When I was growing up, my mom she was the first in her family of 7. She was one of 7 too. She was the first girl to be able to go to college. Her older 2 sisters were sent off to secretarial school, and she had to have a titanic fight with her father, my grandfather, about going to college at all, even though she had a scholarship. She actually ended up getting a convent of nuns to intercede on her behalf. She's a brilliant woman too. She could have done anything, doctor, mathematician. She ended up getting a master's in musical theater directing and performance directing. There's a picture of her, doing a show that Liza Minnelli was once associated with. I mean, my mom's amazing. But then she had no one telling her that she could do X or Y or Z thing in the world. She had no mentorship at all, because there was nothing for women back then other than, fall in line. These are the cultural things that we expect of you. So she had 7 kids, one after the other, very Catholic family, and she went slowly crazy. I mean, as you would with 7 kids. I mean, slowly, just to a place where I could see how miserable she was. And that really obviously has an impact on a kid when you're watching your parent just in absolute torture, right? Because they can't do any of the things that they wanted to do. And so that's the driving force of my life, is to make sure that women get out of this horrible set of stereotypes that have been allotted to us. Everywhere you look in this country, there's horrible misogyny. I mean, look at the administration that just left. Dear God, he's like, I've saved your husband's jobs, ladies. Good for me. Come on. We're the ones that were losing the jobs. What a moron. And then on top of all of that, everywhere you look, you've got, problems in the film industry where women literally over 40 don't show up on screen, or you're the mother, the girlfriend, or the wife. I mean, there's nothing else, right? Or you look in the tech industry, where the broken funnel has shunted us away into marketing and sales and English for so long. Or you look at everything, doctors, science. I mean, really, we have had a horrible set of injustices that have happened to us, and even more horrible for, my sisters in arms that happen to be of color. And it needs to stop. Mm-hmm. I think the driving force of my life is I'm not going to die without seeing a woman president. I think I've given $70,000, $80,000 to women in this last 4 years alone that are running. I was there when Kamala, did her first speech in New York as a max out donor. That's what drives me. And I guess what's weird is that, yes, I build as an activist, and most people in tech, I think, build for money. But when you look at the fact that, again, 90% copy, iterate, 10% disrupt, I don't know. When you disrupt, usually you have your eye on something bigger than just a dollar sign, Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. And obviously as entrepreneurs, right, there's a lot of learning you have to do. You also have to invest into personal development, learning about leadership and learning about people management, learning about culture. There's so many things. What's your perspective on personal development, and what did you do proactively building a fast growing company to really grow your personally?
I did everything I could. I mean, I would say, unfortunately, I was often so busy that there were things later that I realized some of my colleagues were doing that I would have done if I'd known. I mean, of course, when you're a CEO, you're approached by every group and coach in existence, and everybody wants you to hire them for this or that, or pay you enormous sums of money every year to attend one group, like every quarter. I had to really pick and choose. In the end, I did find some mentorship, although unfortunately, it came and went. I mean, the time period where I was leading, there were so few women that I could talk to. And we are in Chicago, so that was an even more difficult market. There's a lot of white male money here. That said, I got help, but I found my help came from very non-traditional channels. Like, for example, at the time when Sitter City was building its platform, our we had to go out and literally argue to every mom in the country that it was safer to use our platform than hiring the girl next door. And it is. On the girl next door, you're not going to see, background checks she's posted for you, 5-star reviews, her references right there. You're not going to see that, right? So you're not going to check those necessarily. But I had to go out and make the case. So at the time, I remember many years ago, and I was doing all these interviews, 64% of women in TV, of producers on media staff, were women. And so in a weird way, it was those women that built the company. I mean, one by one, they actually looked at what I was saying and the press kits we were sending in and actually thought, oh my gosh, this applies to me. They were blown away. I mean, so many of them said they were blown away that of the dross that was coming in, something applied to them. And then these women just would promote us and promote us and promote us. So did I get the training to become, go off and become a Steve Jobs? No, what I got was massive amplification. And then, with a hiccup in the middle, I was able to get, another woman finally, when there were enough in the market that, one was able to come up for circulation into the CEO role to kind of become a mother, a mother / leader to the company and take it to the next level.
Which brings me to my question about leadership as well, right? Because I think, especially as you're getting started, you're a founder, you're overseeing the product side of the business, you're overseeing the sales and the marketing, you're also overseeing maybe HR and culture and all those things. So you have a lot of functions that you're filling in. And then there comes a point you kind of have to also be the leader. In your case, you probably have to go and pitch it to investors, raising capital. Yeah. There's all those things. How did you balance that manager roles and the leader role? And which mode do you prefer to operate in?
Well, you do the best you can. I was happier being hands-on with the company. I was a very evangelistic CEO. I absolutely loved doing the television, getting in front of huge crowds, all the stuff that ironically went along with the opera degree, which I did also eventually use. And I love meetings as well. I would find that for every 40, meetings a guy would have to do to venture capitalists. In the beginning, I had to do more like 120. It was exhausting. I'd go to the coast and I would deal with that. But I did them all and I enjoyed that too. I was proud that we raised a Series A and a Series B, both very successfully. But if I were to say, look, do I prefer to be the one taping up the boxes and on the ground meeting actual users versus the person who's schmoozing in the boardroom and calling everyone prior to the board meeting? Definitely the first. I mean, that's me. And, it goes along again with the skill set. Like after I stepped up to the board level and had my twins, who are now 9 and a handful, I was able to go back and use my opera degree. So I've been able to do solo roles at Carnegie Hall and Chicago Lyric Opera alongside Renee Fleming and Thomas Hampson and Goodman Theater. And that was really important to me too, to be able to use that evangelistic side as it originally had manifested in singing. I got to do that for a few years as well, which I think is the most outrageous luck that I was able to do that too. Nobody gets that chance to do both, to have the original dream and then the accidental dream. I think I might be the luckiest person alive to have gotten to do that.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, a lot of times I think once the business takes off, people just pursue that dream and oftentimes forget about some of the other, dreams that they had, right? They just pursue the one that really did take off. I'm happy to
Yeah.
hear you're able to kind of pursue both.
Yeah.
So I know especially when you're trying to build a company, right? A vision and value and all those things are an important part of making a company. In your case, especially when you had thousands of sitters across the country, which necessarily you didn't have an influence on how to get there, how to transfer your vision over to all those people. So how did you balance that? I know you have your core team, the core company, the employees, right? That the product team and the design and marketing and all those different teammates. But how did you get the vision across the whole organization, especially those contractors that worked for you as sitters?
Well, I think the wonderful thing about Sitter City was we've always been ridiculously simple.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was just find people, good, fast, safe caregivers, period.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say the larger vision was connected into my mom and getting women generally into power and out of this miserable situation we are in America. So I'd say the larger mission might have been making sure women across the world don't miss the chance to live their fullest lives
Mm-hmm.
due to having the best care. But, I don't think it was that hard to understand. What I will say is in retrospect, and it's funny, now that the company's been sold, you see things you didn't see before. I had a really hard time hiring and retaining talent. And not only because I was in Chicago, that can be very hard. And, we had people coming in for many years from London and New York, and they would fly in, but just work virtually. So we were always on top of that. I mean, you have to do that sometimes in various markets, but men would look at it sometimes and work for it, but not fully commit because it was a babysitting startup. It wasn't Facebook or Twitter or, Snapchat. It wasn't sexy. It was kids, babies, and only in the last 2 years was that actually called out. It was said somewhere in a board meeting or something. And it wasn't an attack. It was just said verbally. And I thought, oh, that's it. That's what I've been sensing, is that the women fully commit, the moms overcommit. But, I had trouble with the guys, because it was just something that wasn't traditionally what a guy would want to be associated with. When you think of the freewheeling San Fran Tech Valley, of course, you definitely don't want to be associated with this. But even in the Midwest, we had some issues. It's kind of sad. But I think that's gone now. I know a ton of dads that have worked with the company and done heroic work. So I would just say it was in, I don't know, just some of the earlier years. Like, it wasn't anyone high up. It was more just pervasive throughout the rest of the company. Sometimes you'd get people and you'd be like, they're never going to commit to this. They're just going to see it as a woman's, like, I don't know, a babysitter's club. And contractors were the biggest area where I would see that, where they would sort of look at us and go, oh, this one will be a fine way to roll, to like round out our portfolio. But they wouldn't see us as like a, $1 million proposition, and that just, in retrospect, annoys me. But I guess at the time I didn't think of it. I was always just selling,
And obviously, you shared a little bit of your experience, the early days of actually having to go to the college campuses and having to tell the story and recruiting sitters, and at the same time going to those mom parties and telling them why they should use Sitter City to hire babysitters. No one really understands the pain and all the suffering that went into it. Only people now recognize, hey, there's this woman in Chicago, a tech giant who just exited, right? And everybody wants to be Genevieve because now that you have the success. What would you...
You can have my kids. If you want them, they're cute. They're cute. Just kidding.
What would you tell those entrepreneurs? Because everybody wants the fame and the gain that comes after the fact, but no one really wants to put in the legwork and the heartaches and the sleepless nights to really get to that success. What advice do you have for those entrepreneurs, who are super thrilled about the success stories, but not necessarily want to put in the time?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. Well, what I would say is if you're not willing to put in the time, you won't get anywhere. What I do see is that there are entrepreneurs that are desperate to put in the time, but they're not on morphine, or the timing is wrong, or the world isn't positioned at the right place. So everything has to line up right. I have the weirdest situation. Actually, there's a Harvard Business School case study on Sitter City. It's really funny. You should read it. It's called Playing with Fire, right? It's how we did almost all the wrong things that they teach at Harvard are wrong. Got it right though, and so, like, it's very funny. I started everything in the middle of the dot-com crash. I was building literally out of compulsion and trauma. But somehow that was the best thing ever because, no, you know, overly ambitious male VCs got to it and decided they were going to flip it, sell it, like any of that stuff. Nobody did that because they were just uninterested, right? So I was able to talk to these college students, to these mothers, I was able to talk till the cows came home. We built such a ridiculously trusted brand. And yes, I screwed things up. Everybody screws things up. But I'm so proud that the whole time I did nothing but stay laser focused on her pain. I literally could not be laser focused on her pain, both the pain of the sitter that needed a job, because my God, that was me. I was sitting for 30, 40 families in college to make it through college, but the pain of the mother, which I was so connected to, I did not know anything beyond that pain. So I was able to stay on it. And I think, there's so many changes that have happened, right? Even to us, when the industry started building, I mean, it was very hard in 2016 to suddenly see male VCs kind of put their heads up and go, oh, we're going to throw money at this and, pull this, lady out of Harvard Business School to run it and blah. And it was really amazing to watch them suddenly we missed this industry, right? And I've been there for 5 years. It's just hard, But I would say that if you stay on your morphine and if you're almost not able to get away from it, that's one good thing. A lot of entrepreneurs today want what can't possibly happen, which is they want to be able to build successful B2C at the scale we used to be able to build at, with the lack of ratchets in the paperwork that we also used to have. Because when the web was, really in its heyday, 2005 to 2012 or something, I mean, if you really would see that the VCs hadn't figured out yet how to get the maximum out of the deal. So Wild West, you could still win. You could still walk away with X million, deca millions. You could still do that. Also, you could build a successful B2C using one channel. Now you've got multi-channel that everybody's going to, but there was one channel in the beginning, and we were able to tap that, which made things very simple in terms of acquisition and CPA. We just got lucky. I mean, I find that right now B2B and automation are where it's at, and that's definitely not, an area where I would have succeeded. I also find that, entrepreneurs these days have 6 months to make it or break it. I had 3.5 years to run around, the luxury of talking to my users, because everyone looked the other way. So many weird things happened, I'm just glad it all lined up well. I think every entrepreneur I've met wants to put in the time. If they don't make it far. The problem is, can you? Will the world let you? Will the axes align? So if you have morphine, you've got one step. You have some industry trends in your favor, you've got the second one, and I don't know. I mean, the third one's luck.
Yeah, and I think what you just said earlier, it's also the fact that you knew the pain very deeply, that you were so committed to that cause, that you were putting aside. Yeah, you were putting aside the whatever the quick wins to really see the cause come to life, right? And to have it seen fully realized. And I guess that's
I was an activist. Yeah, and I actually I'll share with you, over the last 4 years, yes, I put money into women running, but I put over $1 million into into fighting against the administration that we've had for the last 4 years. Thank God it seems to have worked. It wasn't me. It was 1 million groups doing 1 million beautiful things. But, I founded a conference and put together the first ever book of how to use tech to win. There's never been a playbook. I gathered the top 10 digital strategists in the country. We made the playbook. We literally built 17, online courses. We built a 200-page book. We built online tools. We built references and resources and graphics and teach people now, running at the lowest levels, what you only learn when you're running for governor or higher. I've taught 1,350 women and diverse candidates how to use tech to win. I've been part of a TV show promoting women running. I've done a million things, which has been exciting. And I've kept laser focused, in terms of like spending in one direction, just sort of in the direction of fund the right people that are going to need funding to win. And I'm glad to say that I've learned a ton. But I mean, that's the thing. It doesn't matter if I'm spending $1 million or I'm making X amount of millions. I'm going to put the same amount of effort in because I'm just so obsessed with seeing the change, if that makes sense.
Well, certainly. And I think one question that brings to mind is obviously you've been investing into a lot of women entrepreneurs. And of course, you've seen some of them succeed and some of them haven't, right? What have you seen the commonality for the ones that really did take off? And what have you seen in terms of some of those companies that you've invested into didn't really, get the traction that they needed?
Oh, gosh. Well, there's a certain type of personality that appeals to me, that I understand. I will say that. And that personality is one building out of trauma and compulsion. I have some light OCD in my family. I mean, maybe not so light sometimes, and it works for me. I've been able to aim it outwards, right? I look for that in others. I look for a slightly manic personality, for somebody who literally cannot stop talking for a straight hour, somebody who cannot not do this. Now, once you're beyond that, you have all those other factors. Are they on morphine? Will they stay on it? That's obviously a criterion. Is the market aligned for what they're doing? Did they choose the right niche? Are they narrow enough? Are they trying to solve the world? And then you look in and you say, all right, where's the weakness? Are they an evangelist CEO? Are they a disruptor or a build and teach? Are they, a copy and iterate, a follower? Are they, are they going to be more behind the scenes, in front of the scenes? It varies. In the beginning, I would say too, like a couple of my investments were just to get a woman to another level of investment. I didn't even look that much into would it succeed or not. I just had a woman come to me and say, Jen, no one will give me, the 500,000 unless you put in 50. Will you please put in 50? I just can't do this anymore. I'm about to give up. And I would give her the 50. She would get the 500. And, some of those are killing it today. I mean, so it depends. One of my most exciting investments that I have quite a bit in actually is called Equilibria. It's a Coco Mears and Marcy Capron, a brilliant team that I've seen. And, they've had a few different plays, some better, some worse, like all of us, and I just know that when they go down a road, they will not stop till it's done. They're utterly, compulsive about what they build. And so that's all you can ever do. We can't be psychic and see the results, but you can find what you know.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought maybe like you said, when you got started, right, who would have thought you would be at $10 million in annual recurring revenue, right, for City, right?
My parents thought I was going to live in a bus in New York or marry a tenor and run off to Paris. I mean, seriously, they did not believe it.
Yeah, and I just heard the announcement that Slack just got, I guess in the negotiation stage with Salesforce for $27 billion. I'm like, good Lord, where are these valuations coming for some of these tech companies? And I think Slack, for the most part, was even a free tool. And it wasn't until recently, I think they found a revenue model. So it's just kind of crazy to see some of the tech companies. Like you said, I think you are right about that. The B2B tech space is just ripe for harvest in terms of automations and machine learning and all those things that I'm seeing in terms of companies that are coming into that space. And not too many B2C success stories like the ones that you have.
Well, I would say, too, Chicago's a hotbed of B2C. I mean, when you look at Matt Maloney and Grubhub and what they did over there, I will say as well about this market in Chicago, what disappoints me is that we do not swing for the fences when something shows real promise, like San Francisco or Boston would, or New York. We don't do that. So we have incredible B2C. Back when B2C was really on the rise, we had incredible B2C innovation, but we never put enough into it. And so we lost it. Yeah, and it'll be rolled up instead of, actually becoming the roller rubber,
Yeah, and I think
which is a shame.
some of those industries are changing rapidly as well. Like Groupon, I remember you were investing into a company that was a more of a B2B product, a competitor product of like a Groupon model as well, early
Hmm.
days. So obviously you're a mom. You said you have twins. You're taking care of your elderly parents. You have investing. You're doing investments. You're doing a lot of coaching and consulting of other founders. You got a lot going on. So what are some of the productivity hacks that you have to make sure that you can get all the things that that you need to get done can be done?
Well, it's been such a weird time. So, I mean, I had, all these different phases. Sitter City was absolutely amazing, and it's still weird not to be in the board meetings. I mean, early this year I was having a ton of them, right? So it's just totally random, that one. Um, I would say, I had a period after the twins where I was actually traveling around the world and singing, which was also incredible. And then I had an activist phase for reasons in the last 4 years where I was literally nonstop. I mean, that was the hardest thing I think I've ever done, because like building a company, you're just aiming a fire, like aiming a hose at one dumpster fire. But when you're in politics, trying to make a difference, it's like 400 of them playing Tetris. I don't know. I mean, and then the pandemic, right? So, I mean, I leap from board meetings to mentorship meetings to things like this, which are wonderful, to concerts, I mean, I leap from thing to thing, but I'm also, my kids are slight special needs. So I've got one of them I literally home teach. The other one manages in the classes, but, I have to offset some stuff. We've taken the ultra safe route because we have elders, so we don't have a nanny anymore. We haven't since March. Paid for a long time, but in the end, just thought, gosh, we don't know when we're ever going to need this person again. And same thing with cleaning. So now I'm a housewife on top of all the other things. It's impossible, right? It's absolutely infuriating and horrible and impossible to manage all of this in addition to everything else. And I think I'm not alone. Um, I would say I'm getting it all done. My makeup before this call took 5 minutes. I mean, under this are PJs, right? You don't know that. I know that. I mean, it's you just go. And I stopped pretending I have any secret formula for it. There isn't any. I think the situation women and moms are in this country is horrifying. I think that we're still expected to do the majority of the housework. We're still discriminated. Even a year out of work, we are considered, put her up on the shelf, she's expired. We are, subjected to horrible misogyny after the age of 40. I'm 42 now. I'm dealing with that. We are, laughed at, ridiculed, told what to do. I think it needs to change. And
Mm-hmm.
I think too, I think you had a very good question in balance, but I think it'd be nice for everyone to stop asking about how we balance it all and start saying, how can we help you?
Mm-hmm.
This needs to stop. Kamala is one teeny tiny step in a direction that needs 100 more steps.
Mm-hmm.
And, by being a woman on your show, maybe another woman will see it, and that's another tiny step. But that question, the balance thing, I'm sure you ask it of everyone, but it's a little bit of a sensitive point for women because we cannot balance what we've been given. We cannot do it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, somehow I'm managing, but it's not possible. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
and
it's a hard one.
I think you're right about it. My wife took time off from work when we had our first one, and then we have now three kids, and she never went back because
Yeah,
once you have one baby, once you're taking care of it, you have another baby, and then there goes her career. She had a master's in biomedical engineering, and she was
yeah.
in the research role in Northwestern Memorial Hospital. But once you take time off, it's very hard to get back into a career. And there goes 7, 8 years, and now you've kind of fell back, right? You've kind all the progress you've made kind of lost. And I think you make a great point about it, especially for women getting back into workforce, and especially if you're in your 40s, like you said, you're losing great opportunities because you're not given such chance to succeed in certain roles.
It's horrifying. This country is a horrible place for women and moms, and it needs to change. And the worst part is too, my husband worked for the Obama campaign. We both put so much into that. And I remember the day after he was elected, and I was walking into the building, and I looked at this security guard, and he looked back at me, and in his eyes I could see, we're equal. And I was like, yes you are. Like it was this awesome moment, right, for Black people and Obama, and they were a brilliant first couple, and women haven't had that yet. Mm-hmm. And of course, Obama being elected was the beginning of us going through an equality process for, a group. Women, we haven't even gotten there yet. Mm-hmm. I mean, and after that happens, there will be all the rage and the unleashing and the horror of, the nation coming to terms with the uppity woman that does become president. I mean, I hope I see some of it in my lifetime, but we are behind. We need to fix this now. I don't know what I need to do. I've been throwing money at women. At some point, maybe I'll run. I don't know what else to do because, we are, I guess, supposed to fix this problem too, on top of everything else we fix on a regular basis. And I thank you for bringing attention to this issue and being an ally.
Yeah, most certainly. And what advice do you have for other entrepreneurs? Maybe they are founders and maybe they're just getting started, right? And what advice do they have for them? How do you, even maybe practical recommendation on how they can give a platform for women to kind of grow up into those leadership role, or even if they have ideas, how can they do a better job in giving them a platform to succeed and grow?
Well, first of all, educate yourself right away in just the basics of race and discrimination, because let's just go to that level first, right? So that we can all take a step up there as we had to this past summer. And God, that was overdue. But then on top of all of that, I would say educate yourself. Email me. I mean, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn, or chase me anywhere, but, hit me up on Twitter, but I'll send you all the materials, PowerPoints that I said around the world, about what happened to women. In 1984, some marketing team thought, hey, let's market computers as gaming geek devices for boys. That literally took, an industry which had been half women, half men, and turned it down this insane path where women have been shunted out. Those of us that even make it through the gauntlet just of school alone come out into a completely broken industry. You just need to know what's happening, and then you'll figure it out. You'll figure out what to do, who to promote, who to put where. But just educate yourself first, and then, rely on your instincts. It's just not fair. And if you don't know what happened, you can't make steps to fix it.
Mm-hmm. Any parting wisdom for our audience?
Well, thank you for listening to me. I can't think of anything. I mean, I've had like 7-8 careers now too. It's kind of fun to, shuffle through all of them as I have on this call. Find the morphine, make sure the market's ready, and find something that is not just money to you, but that is a cause. I suppose you can build things for money, but I rarely see it work. Only in very frothy times. Find something that actually needs to be fixed and that you compulsively need done in the world. Do that. It'll be so easy for you. You won't not be able to do it. You might as well loop that into what you're doing for your work, and then you'll succeed no matter what.
Yeah, and I think even today the millennials do follow a cause more than anything else.
Oh, they're great at that.
Yeah, most certainly. What a great advice. Well, Genevieve, I certainly appreciate you sharing this afternoon and sharing some of your wisdom with our audience. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
Most certainly.
This episode of Coffee with Closers is brought to you by One IMS, a leading digital marketing agency helping businesses win new customers. To request a free marketing ROI audit, please visit oneims.com. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. To make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe.